Tonight, we travel not to a castle or a forest, but deep below the sea, where the water is cold and blue and silent. There is no sun here, only glowing coral, silverfish, and the slow, patient rhythm of the ocean's heart. This is not the tale of seashell songs and happily ever after. This is a gentler kind of story, and sadder. It comes from a time when fairy tales were meant to teach us things about longings, about love, and about the price we pay to become more than we are. It is the true story of the Little Mermaid. She did not dream of treasure, or of dancing, or even of a prince. She dreamed of an immortal soul. So now, as the world grows quiet, let us sink into the sea, where this story waits like a pearl hidden in the dark beneath the sea, where the water is deep and darker than twilight. There lived a sea king with 6 daughters. They were mermaids, each more graceful than the next. But the youngest was the most silent and thoughtful. Her eyes were the clearest blue, and her voice, when she sang, could calm even the fiercest storm. Yet she rarely spoke. She only listened. The Sea King's castle was made of pale coral and polished shells. Its windows were of the clearest amber, and the roof shimmered with mother-of pearl. In the gardens, strange trees grew from the ocean floor, their leaves swaying like seaweed in the current. Fishes darted like birds between blossoms of red and violet, and the light that reached that deep was soft and cold. The young mermaid loved it all, but most of all, she longed to see the world above the sea. Their grandmother, an old and wise mermaid who tended to them lovingly, told stories of the world beyond the water. She spoke of the sun, bright and golden, and the stars that sparkled at night, of lands with mountains, forests, and people who walked on legs instead of tails. The little mermaid listened with wide eyes. "Do they live forever?" she once asked. The grandmother shook her head. "Their lives are shorter than ours, but their souls rise up into the stars when they die. We become foam upon the waves." That answer stayed with the mermaid, buried like a seashell in her heart. When a mermaid turned 15, she was allowed to swim to the surface and see the world above. Her sisters went, one by one, each returning with stories of ships, moonlight, and great cities by the shore. The youngest waited. She planted red flowers in her corner of the garden, shaped like a rising sun. She sculpted a marble statue of a boy she'd found at the bottom of the sea, fallen from a wrecked ship. She imagined his world, his voice, his sky. Finally, on the evening of her 15th birthday, her grandmother placed a crown of white lilies in her hair and kissed her forehead. "Now you may go," she said. The little mermaid rose through the water, higher and higher, until the surface shimmered like glass above her. And then, quietly, she broke through. The sky above was fading to twilight. A gentle breeze touched her face. The stars were beginning to appear, soft and far away. She floated silently, her eyes filled with wonder. Not far from her, a ship drifted, its sails golden in the last light of the sun. Laughter echoed across the water. On board, a celebration was taking place. The little mermaid swam closer, careful not to be seen. There were lanterns and music and people dancing on deck. At the center stood a young man with dark eyes and a gentle smile. A prince. She watched, her heart beginning to stir. The little mermaid could not take her eyes off him. The prince laughed as others raised their glasses. 100 lanterns glowed like stars across the sails, and the sea shimmered gold around the ship. Then the wind shifted. Clouds gathered quickly. The sky darkened. Thunder rumbled from the horizon. The ship's sails flapped sharply as rain began to fall. The waves rose higher. In a flash of lightning, the mast snapped with a great crack. People cried out as the ship broke apart. The little mermaid dove beneath the surface. She searched through wreckage and foam, weaving between broken beams and falling sails. At last, she found the prince sinking, unconscious, pulled down by the storm. Wrapping her arms around him, she swam toward the surface, pushing hard against the surging tide. They drifted for hours. When the storm faded and the sky turned pale, she spotted land in the distance, a stretch of rocky coast and a small grove of trees. Carefully, she brought him to shore. He lay motionless on the sand, his skin pale, his eyes closed. She listened closely. He was breathing. She brushed his wet hair away and gazed at him quietly. Her voice, beautiful and low, whispered a song only the sea could understand. Then bells rang faintly through the trees. A group of young girls appeared from a nearby building, laughing and calling to one another. One of them noticed the prince and ran to him. The others followed. The little mermaid watched from the waves, hidden among the rocks. When the prince opened his eyes, he saw only the girls standing beside him. He smiled weakly, unaware of the one who had saved him. The mermaid turned and slipped silently beneath the water. She returned home, but she was not the same. She wandered the palace halls, no longer singing with her sisters or tending to her garden. Her thoughts were fixed on the world beyond the prince who didn't know she existed. She asked her grandmother many questions about humans. Do they live forever if they are good? She asked. Her grandmother shook her head. Their lives are brief, but their souls live on beyond death. We live longer, but when we die, we become nothing. Foam on the sea. To gain a soul, the little mermaid whispered, what must be done? The answer was quiet. A human must love you more than anything. Then his soul will flow into yours, and you will have one too. The mermaid looked toward the surface. She wanted more than love. She wanted a soul that would not fade. And she began to wonder what price she would pay to have one. The little mermaid could no longer bear the ache in her heart. Each day she rose silently toward the surface, longing for even a glimpse of the prince. She watched him walk in the palace gardens, saw him ride his horse along the beach, always smiling, always far away. He never saw her. Her sisters noticed her silence. They brought her gifts from shipwrecks, combs, and glimmering trinkets, but she only smiled faintly. Her heart had grown heavy with longing. One night, she slipped away from the coral halls and swam to a place the others feared, the outer edge of the sea, where the water turned black and strange plants twisted like ropes through the current. There, In a valley where no sunlight reached, lived the sea which the witch's home was built from the bones of creatures long forgotten. Sharp-finned fish circled the entrance. As the mermaid approached, the water grew colder. "I know what you seek," the sea which said before she even spoke. "You want legs. You want to walk beside your prince." The little mermaid nodded. The witch smiled with teeth too sharp, "And for that you must pay. I will give you a potion," she continued. "Drink it on land, and your tail will become legs. But with each step, it will feel as though you are walking on knives. You will bleed, though no one will see it." The mermaid trembled but did not turn away. "Pert, and your voice," the witch hissed, "will be mine. You will have no tongue, no sound. You will never sing again." Still, the little mermaid nodded. "If the prince loves you above all others and weds you," the witch said, "then you shall gain a soul. But if he weds another, your heart will break, and you will die. On the first morning after his marriage, you will dissolve into foam." The witch reached into the shadows and drew out a flask, its liquid glowing faintly blue. "Take it," she said. The mermaid hesitated only once. Then she reached out and took the bottle. The witch's laughter followed her as she swam away. She returned to the shore before sunrise, the potion clutched tightly in her hands. She looked up at the sky, now pale with morning, and drank. Pain like fire tore through her. She fell to the sand, her tail twisting, splitting, changing. When she woke, she lay on the beach, weak, shivering, and human. She had legs. The prince found her there, silent and alone. He asked who she was, but she could not answer. Still, he took her in his arms and brought her to his palace. And, though her feet bled with every step, she smiled through the pain and followed him. In the palace, everything was beautiful marble floors, soft music, silken clothes. But the little mermaid moved through it all in silence. She could not speak, could not sing, and yet the prince welcomed her kindly. He dressed her in fine gowns and let her sleep on cushions outside his door. He laughed when she danced, though he never saw the pain behind her smile. Every step was agony, but she bore it without a sound. To others, she was a quiet, lovely mystery. To the prince, she became a gentle companion. He said she reminded him of someone, but not the girl who had saved him. He believed that girl had come from a temple and had vanished. He did not know it was the mermaid who had rescued him from the sea. Still, he loved the little mermaid, as one might love a favorite pet or a child. He let her rest at his feet, stroked her hair when she seemed sad, and called her his silent treasure. But he did not love her with his heart. Often he spoke of duty. One day he would marry. His parents wished him to choose a bride from a distant kingdom. The little mermaid listened, her heart folding inward. Time passed. The prince invited her everywhere, to banquets, to festivals, to quiet walks by the sea. She danced for him, though her feet burned. She smiled, though her soul ached. She hoped, always hoped. One day, the prince's ship set sail. He had agreed to visit the foreign princess his parents spoke of. The little mermaid went with him, standing at the rail each night, watching the waves. When they arrived, The princess stepped forward. She was gentle and beautiful, with a voice like morning bells. And the moment the prince saw her, he grew still. "It is you," he said softly. "You saved me, didn't you? I knew I would find you again." The little mermaid turned her face away. The wedding was arranged at once. The prince was happy. The kingdom rejoiced. And the little mermaid stood beside him, quiet and unseen, though her heart was breaking. The wedding ship was prepared, bright with banners and silver sails. On the evening before the ceremony, the little mermaid leaned on the ship's railing and stared into the dark sea. Her life was almost over. At dawn, she would die, not return to the water, not fall into sleep, but become sea foam, her body dissolving into the tide, her soul lost forever. She thought of her father, her sisters, her grandmother's voice, and the warmth of the sun she would never feel again. She had given up her voice, her world, and her body for love. But the prince would never know. The stars were fading when she heard a sound below the ship. She leaned over the rail and saw her sisters rising from the sea. Their long hair, once beautiful, was now gone cut short and floating in the water around them. Their eyes were wide with sorrow. "We gave our hair to the sea," which one sister said. "In exchange, she gave us this." She held up a dagger. Its blade glinted pale in the early light. "Before the sun rises," she whispered, "you must strike the prince with this. When his blood touches your feet, your legs will return to a tail. You will be a mermaid again. You can live." The little mermaid took the dagger. Her sisters sank back into the sea. She walked through the silent ship. The wind rustled soft curtains, and the deck creaked beneath her feet. Her steps burned, but her hands were steady. In the prince's chamber, the bride and groom slept. His arm was around the princess, his face peaceful and calm. The mermaid stood over him and looked down for a long time. She remembered the warmth of his hand, the sound of his voice, the way he had smiled at her. He had never meant to be cruel. He had simply never known. She raised the dagger once, but her hands began to tremble. She could not do it. With a soft gasp, she turned and fled. Outside, the sky was turning gold. The sun was already touching the edge of the sea. She climbed to the highest part of the ship, looked once more at the world, and then let the dagger fall from her hand into the water. It shimmered and vanished. Then, with one final breath, she threw herself into the sea. The sun rose, but she did not become sea foam. Instead, she rose light as mist, clear as air. Her body dissolved into something softer than water. Her pain lifted. Around her, the sky shimmered gently. She was no longer part of the sea, and not yet part of the stars. She was something in between. The little mermaid rose through the air like breath over still water. She no longer had a body, no pain in her feet, no beating heart. Yet she felt light, calm, and strangely at peace. Around her floated soft forms like herself, shining gently in the morning light. Their movements stirred the breeze, though no one on the ship noticed. Below, the prince and his bride stood on deck, smiling at the sunrise. Music played, laughter echoed, but it did not reach the air above. A voice came to her not from the sea, and not from within, but from around. "You are now one of the daughters of the air," the voice said. "Spirits who move between sea and sky, helping the world in silence." The little mermaid listened. "You have suffered. You have loved. You gave up everything for the happiness of another. That kindness has given you a new life." The daughters of the air did not die as mermaids did, nor did they rise at once to the heavens like human souls. Instead, they lived for 300 years, floating through the world unseen, doing good wherever they could, cooling deserts, guiding ships, calming frightened children, and lifting leaves with laughter. Each kind deed shortened their time on earth. And when at last their years were done, they would rise into the light forever. The little mermaid said nothing. She had no voice, but inside her was a feeling like music. She looked once more at the prince. He was happy. He would never know her name, nor what she had given. But she did not grieve. There was nothing left to mourn. She turned toward the sky and followed the others. Her spirit moved gently through the air, brushing waves, stirring petals, softening cries. The world did not notice her, but the wind felt kinder that day. And somewhere, in a small village by the sea, a child stopped crying and smiled instead. The little mermaid was gone, but she had become something more than a girl, more than a mermaid, more than even a soul. She had become mercy in the wind. The daughters of the air floated quietly through the world, unseen by those below. Wherever they went, they brought stillness. They cooled the faces of the weary. They soothed those who wept. They sang to the lonely without a sound. The little mermaid was among them now. Though she could not be seen, she touched the world in gentle ways. A breeze that lifted a fallen flower, a breath that calmed a frightened child, a hush that settled over the sea just before sleep. She had not won the prince's love. She had not become human, but she had gained something greater path to a soul. Not through magic, not through desire, but through sacrifice, kindness, and the choice to love without expecting anything in return. Each time she did good, a day fell away from her 300 years. Each smile she left behind brought her closer to the sky. And so the world continued. Children were told her story, not just of her beauty or her sorrow, but of her final choice. The story was meant to remind them, gentle acts matter. Small kindnesses, even in silence, shape the world. In Andersen's original tale, he writes that every time a good child smiles, the daughters of the air rejoice, and time is taken from their trial. But when a child behaves unkindly, they weep, and a day is added instead. The little mermaid never judged. She only drifted on a soft current of grace between the sea and the sky. And when her 300 years had passed and all her days were full of kindness, she would rise at last to the world above the stars, not as foam, not forgotten, but as a soul, eternal and free. She who had given everything had, in the end, gained all, and now the sea is calm again. The story has been told, not one of fairy tale endings, but of something deeper, of longing, sacrifice, and quiet strength. The Little Mermaid's journey was not easy, nor was it ever loud. But in the end, her kindness carried her farther than love alone ever could. Perhaps tonight, as you close your eyes, you'll remember her not as a girl who vanished into foam, but as a spirit who rose above sorrow with gentleness and courage. May your dreams be quiet like waves in the dark. May your heart stay soft even when it aches. And may you always find comfort in stories like these whispers from another time, reminding us that even the smallest kindness leaves a ripple behind. Thank you for listening. Sleep well